Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Not in this world you should know, and loving life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then loving life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. But before we get into that, please pray for my PA, Marlena, who's not well at all. And she hasn't been well for a while, and let's just keep her in our prayers. Now, tonight I will be speaking to Ina and her daughter, Jene, about the appalling situation found throughout South African hospitals. We have all heard of that expression, delivering a hospital pass in the game of rugby. In South African hospitals, they are now commonly referring to not as places of healing, but a place where you go to die. I'm not joking. I also want to recognize Pietro Swart, who is watching tonight and who has also gone through a horrible time in a public South African hospital, and she'll probably put some of her comments about it in the side chat. Before I get to my guests on here is some video footage taken at the George Mukari Hospital recently, near Pretoria. Believe it or not, let's have a look at that. So I think you can get the general idea. It's not really a great situation for people who go to that hospital. But this isn't just related to just one hospital. It's pretty well across the board in South Africa. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you a little audio clip where you're going to hear, and I'll give you the background. This is at Steve Biko Hospital. You're going to hear the nurses in a patient's ward just deliberately causing a noise. And it's very rare for nurses to actually go into patients' wards, but when they do, they make sure they make it as uncomfortable as possible for the patients. And I'm going to play this little audio clip, which was recorded just a couple of weeks ago. Here we go.
Standing by the door.
Alright, now one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight is the complete disrespect by nursing staff of patients in hospital care. And I know that Petro, who's watching and can comment on this in the side chat, is that there is absolutely no patient care when it comes to nurses. They are just disrespectful and their attitude is shocking. I'm going to read to you a report that has just come out, and it's a totally different situation, different patient, different hospital, but you'll see that this happens right across the country. Okay, this is a first-hand report on how a patient was treated at Tshwane District Hospital, and it's by a lady called Virginia Kepler-Young, and it's just come out in the last week. Hospital ties uncle's hands so much that it discolors them. That's the headline of this article. 84-year-old Uncle Abraham Holzhausen's hands were tied so tightly to his bed at the Tshwane District Hospital that it drew purple and blue marks across his wrists. His left leg was also tied, and he was left on a bed near an open window as a cold wind. Now we know how cold it's been in Johannesburg in the last few days, when the cold wind blew over him. Uncle Abraham was starved and ice cold, without even a blanket over his feet when his daughter Magda Holzhausen visited him. She said, "My father's feet were cold. His food stood there, and he couldn't even feed himself or drink water because his hands were tied. Magda says he was struggling to breathe and kept coughing because they had him lying flat on his back. I asked the nurse to loosen it up a bit when I noticed she was drunk. They were also rude to me when I just wanted my dad to be put on to have clean clothes. She understands why they had to tie her father's hands because he kept pulling out his catheter, but she'll never understand why they had to tie it up so tightly. She says from the moment her father got there at the hospital, he was treated badly and tied up in casualties and in the ward. Everyone is treated badly there, no matter if you're black, white, brown or Indian, Magda says. Uncle Abraham was initially hospitalized because his blood pressure was very low. She says, I had to fight to give my dad porridge, to dress him, to clean him. I myself cleaned the floor that was filled with water with a cloth that I brought from home, and even over it they made a fuss. Magda says they refused to bring him a clean nappy. She says, I was forced to draw my father out of the hospital and took him to Steve Biko, and there he was also chased away. Magda is now afraid to take her father back to the hospital for fear of being victimized. So there's another first-hand account of what it's like going to a South African hospital. It's an absolute disgrace. I'm going to get our guests on now so that we can get the show on the road. And Petra, please just make comments in the side chat, and if I see them, I'll certainly put the questions you might have to Jene or to her mother Ina. Here we go. Hi, Ina.
Hello.
Hi, Jene.
Hi, Scott. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. Thank you for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Now, I've just read that little story about the Tshwane District Hospital, and also shown that video clip and played that audio of the nursing staff. And talking about the nursing staff, Ina, I'm going to put this question to you. You've had some experience, first-hand experience, because
Absolutely.
I think it's your sister Nettie is in, or
That's
was in a
right.
hospital until recently. Can you tell me what the attitude of the nursing staff is like at the hospital where she was at?
You know, and first, they simply disregard. You can ask them a question and they will sometimes look at you and not even answer you. And the patient can call them and they will also not respond to that. You know, we call it the godlike attitude that they have. They totally ignore you as though you do not exist. You can talk to them. Eventually you say, out of the 7 people here, who can I speak to? And then maybe you're lucky and somebody will talk to you. But there is an amazing, horrible attitude virtually throughout the hospital staff. I cannot even say. We met 1 or 2 that was nice, but most of them have got amazing bad attitudes. So yeah, I can tell you many, many stories, but I'm just going to answer your questions.
Okay. Now look, I lived in South Africa until I was in my early 30s, and I went to a hospital a couple of times, and it was only for short times. But what I found was that the nursing staff, the doctors, everyone was professional. They looked after you, they cared for you, they made sure that you got your meals, that everything was sorted. And since 1994, and you can just about point to any government department in the country, the hospitals have just gone to pot, haven't they?
Absolutely. It's absolute disgrace. I'm so shocked. I cannot believe when I tell people the stories and the things that I've seen, that it breaks my heart to think this is our South Africa that we love, and it's really so sad. But yeah, that is what's happening.
Yeah.
And the disregard for old people is just shocking.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Well, a lady that you know, Petra Swart, is actually commenting in the side chat, and I'm going to put this to you, Jene, because you know Petra well. She says, I was ignored, then I was called a bully from one of the sisters at the ward. Do you have some more information about that?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, no, definitely. Because like I say, it's the one thing I appreciate about Petra. She didn't keep quiet, and I mean, she could tell herself that you walk in there, the place is filthy. You have to ask them literally to clean. I mean, clean the bathrooms, make it tidy, and she went full on. She didn't just sit back and like, okay, well, we don't want to make waves because of how they will treat us. She went up full steam ahead, and because she put them in their place and kept, demanding proper service and rightful human service, she was called a bully, and they treated her like as if it was a clown, if I can say that. They treated her like a clown. And all that she demanded is what constitutionally is your right in a hospital, and sanitation, so they tried playing victim, actually is the correct term, instead of doing what they were supposed to be doing.
And what I've noticed in many comments that I've received in the past, in emails and video clips that I've seen, is that the nursing staff seem to be embedded with their mobile phones. They seem to have their heads just stuck in their mobile phones the whole time, and that they really don't care about the patient. Have you got something to say about that?
Well, I actually asked permission one evening to see my sister just for 2 or 3 minutes. We had a very urgent meeting the next day with her lawyer about some of her policies, and got permission to actually see her. And they phoned from the bottom to the staff and to the ward, and eventually they said, yes, I can see her. And as I got there, first they wouldn't open the door until I literally eventually shouted, please, can somebody just open the door? It's locked at night. So they opened the door, and there were 7 of them sitting at the counter. And as I walked past, the one said to me, come back, come back, come back. And that was her attitude. I said, thank you so much for letting me see my sister. And all of them were sitting on their phones. And she said to me, what is your business with your sister? I said to her, it's very private. I just need to talk to her for 2 minutes and I'll be out of your hair. And she said to me, no, you must tell me what is your business with her. I said, that's exactly what it is. It's private. And she would not. And this went on, the same conversation, for about 3 minutes or so. And she said, well, sorry, then you cannot, unless you reveal what your business is. By now, the rest of the staff put their phones down, and they were enjoying the interaction I had with this nurse. And eventually I started crying, being so cross. And I just said to her, you know what? Call security, call anybody. I am just going to get a yes or a no from my sister, because for some reason her phone was off and I couldn't talk to her. And they laughed in such a way when I walked out of there. I went inside the ward because she was just around the corner. And I spoke to her and she answered me, and I walked out. And the 7 women started laughing like bloody hyenas. And I turned back and I said to them, you must pray to God that it's not your father or your mother or your sister that is subjected to this kind of behavior in a hospital. And I turned around and I wanted to go out, and they wouldn't unlock the door. So they just sat there laughing at me. Exactly what I heard there with Pietro. That's what they did with me. If a doctor didn't enter, he had a card, and as he came in, and he swiped his card, the door opened. I had an opportunity. But they were all literally sitting there laughing at me at the closed door, wouldn't open that door.
Wow.
So,
well, Petra,
phones, it's in the order of the day. They are forever on their phones, sitting at the counters with their phones.
Well, Petra says that the CEO of the hospital she was at, and the whole of the management had a meeting, and she bombarded all of the management, and they were surprised of what she was going through. Now, if you consider that every single patient goes through this, do you think that they were surprised, or do you think that they were just, pushing her
No, they're
off?
simply ignoring it because they asked me if I wanted to put in a report of mismanagement and on a complaint. At first, she couldn't find a complaint form. And eventually she got a form and I wrote the complaint. That complaint never went to management, and she pretended. The next day I asked her about the incident because then they made it personally. I was really, really annoyed. And I asked her, did she send the complaint? I'm not allowed to complain to the higher up. I don't know what they call them, but I had to complain to the nursing sister first. At first, she just wouldn't understand what I was trying to tell her. And then eventually she gave me a complaint form. I filled it in, never went to management. So I think they do know, but they are also in denial. They pretend that they're
complicit.
Very complicit about this whole thing.
Yeah.
They simply ignore it.
Well, I have to say that I think that Petro is extremely brave, because when you're at a hospital, you're really in their care, and I've seen so many reports of overdosing on drugs. So what they can literally do is, if you're causing trouble, is kill you with drugs.
Well, that is exactly what happens, and that's why nobody is complaining. You know, when Pietro started, I said, oh, this woman is looking for trouble, because now my sister kept on saying, Innie, don't say anything, because they take it out on us if you complain. But that night they made it so personal that I had to put in a complaint. And after that, I cannot even begin to tell you the bedpan stories in that ward, what happened to my sister. It's absolutely horrendous. I have no words for it. Ask me a question and I will tell you about it, because I think like a million stories about that.
Yeah.
Pietro was very brave to address the problem immediately. But through the filth, through the dirty, I picked up needles from the floor and pieces of plaster. And when they do these, masks are just about everywhere, that I pick up the things and throw them in the dustbin. So yes, Pietro was very brave. And I must say she actually gave me a little push in the right direction, because if it wasn't for her, I would have kept quiet until my sister left the hospital. But I think they got rid of her, because we were making waves.
Yeah.
Quite frank.
Now you mentioned bedpans, and I'm hearing reports of nappies that are left on patients in beds for over a week. Now, can you imagine sitting in your own poo and piss for over a week? I mean, that is just disgusting.
Well, maybe a week is a bit overboard, but let me tell you that eventually the nappy, that was in the George Mukari hospital. You know, I got a phone call from my sister, and I live in Natal, and she just said to me, they call me Innie instead of Ina, and she said, Innie, come save me. And I got in my car that night and I drove all the way through to Pretoria. When I got to that hospital, she had a blanket over her that had so many holes in it. It was absolutely, that's where the monkeys were.
Oh,
that was
gosh.
Absolutely disgusting. She had a nappy on that you couldn't close it up anymore. It was so full of pee.
Oh, no.
To see a doctor, you cannot see a doctor. Eventually, we waited about 3 hours to actually, and then I said to them, I want my sister out of this hospital. And he said to me, I said, she's been here for 2.5 weeks. There's no diagnosis. All you do is pump her full of tramadols. And my friend, thank God my friend is a nurse, and she said to me, Ina, tramadol stays in your body, the opiates stay in your body. Now, it's already a week that she had nothing to eat. She had a drip on I say to her, every time we come here, this is the same drip with the same, it's not even working. So why does she have a drip on if it's not working? They say to me they'll do the sonar, which they didn't do immediately, but afterwards I said I'll leave her for another day in hospital if they're going. Then he wrote on the form they must do the sonar the next day. Never got a report of that, and then I decided to take her out of hospital. And they were chanting, saying, oh, and they said, you can't take her because she's going to most probably die tomorrow. And you know, my words to them was, she can die in my arms and I will be a happy person. But in this hospital, she will not die. A monkey knocked over a Coke and it got spilt on her bed, and she just cried and said,
hang on, a monkey in her ward?
A monkey on her bedside table spilled. They come into the ward and they actually take the fruit that we leave with them from the bedside table.
Or they steal your personal belongings.
They take your personal belongings. Cannot believe, I cannot even. It sounds like a story. If my daughter didn't record it, I don't think anybody would believe it.
No,
really.
You mentioned a drip that wasn't even working, that was stuck in her arm.
Was stuck in her arm, and when, excuse me, one moment. You know, the next day we arranged, and I said to them, I'm taking her. I had to have 5 interviews with them. And the last one was with the doctor because they wouldn't let her go unless I gave them a nice report. That eventually when I sat with that doctor, I said to him, you know what? I'm not going to complain about her nappies, about the monkeys, about the filth. I'm not complaining about anything. All I want you to do is sign her out of this hospital. He says, so does that mean you have nothing to complain about? To say, write that down if you want to, but I am not leaving her here. And when they said to me that I can't move her, I said, I've got an ambulance on. They were waiting for my call and they would fetch her from hospital.
Yeah.
And then the nurse said, oh, she even has a private ambulance to come and fetch her sister. How sweet is that? You know, with that disrespectful way that they said it. And we took her out of that hospital and nursed her back to health at home within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So
now, I just want to confirm what you said there, was that they were not going to let your sister leave the hospital unless you gave them a clean sheet when it came to how they treated your sister.
Absolutely.
So in other words, they're covering up. That's what we're saying.
They actually removed, that was the hospital that dropped her. She fell in that hospital. And you know, because she was unconscious, she heard them say, take that out of the report. And they tore it up right in front of her eyes. That there's no report of her falling, because they took that out of the file and tore it up in front of her. That's how disrespectful it is.
Yeah. Now, Jene, is there anything you want to just add at this stage? Just over what we've been talking about?
I think that's what Jene wanted to say.
No, I just wanted to mention just the fact that they had dropped her and they covered up. They didn't even let us know that, you know, they had injured her and that they had removed the reports and everything from her personal file. So, like when my mum went for the interview with the doctor, he kept insinuating, "Are you sure that there isn't, you know, any complaints and stuff?" It's because they knew about what had happened. No, I don't even have words, to be honest.
No. Now, can I just say something? And this is not a racist comment, but are these nurses all black?
All of them.
Okay.
Very seldom that you see a white nurse. And, you know, one incident when I got there, the next day I took her some soup. And you can't believe it. They wouldn't let me give her the soup. At one stage, I said to this lady, just remove yourself. I am going to give her the soup to drink because she hasn't had food for a week. I am forcing this soup down her throat, whether she likes it or not. And I removed her the next day from hospital.
Wow.
So she had a drip. For a week, she got she gave me some of the tramadols. And when she didn't want to drink the medication, then they forced her to take it. They would literally put it in her mouth and make her swallow it. I said, how can you make her drink the tablets if you know she hasn't eaten? That was the tramadol. And she said, Innie, I've got so much pain when I drink it. She would put it under her tongue and then spit it out when they go away. And when I come to see her, she would put it in my hand and just say, take it out of or she would just put it in bed because they never cleaned the beds. So she would just put it under her body and leave it there and say, search for it and just take it away.
No,
so
they drug their patients up like she was semi-unconscious because of the amount of drugs in her system.
Absolutely.
Wow. Now, just to be clear, these nurses treat everybody like that, regardless of skin color. But I think
regardless of skin color, they do that to their own. You know, in the mornings, my sister said to me, Innie, I cry when I see it. For breakfast, they get 2 slices of bread on a serviette, and that is breakfast. And they used to fight who is going to get her bread because she didn't eat it. So with nothing on it, no butter, no jam, nothing. 2 slices of bread on a serviette. That was breakfast. And even the patients, their visitors, would come and take my sister's food. She said all the time because she couldn't eat. And she was in that hospital for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Maybe longer. I must tell you, she's been in and out of hospital so many times that I can't remember dates. And I wish I did write the dates down of everything, but I didn't.
Well, the amount of claims against the hospitals in South Africa for medical mistreatment runs into billions of rands each year.
Can imagine.
Billions of rands. Now, if they cleaned up their act, they could easily afford to treat patients properly, because those billions of rands would then not be going out to people who've been injured by what they're doing in these hospitals.
No, because this bed sore that she developed was negligence on the hospital's part, and she nearly lost her leg because of it.
Oh, no.
Her foot. Because we treated that wound in hospital. They knew she developed a bed sore on her heel. And it got so bad, and eventually she was discharged because she was supposed to get an operation for a hip. She slipped and broke her hip. And they eventually put a long pin in her down to her knee and some plates in her hip. And that bed sore developed then. So we treated it on our own, with our own bandages, our own ointments. Didn't get better, but she was discharged after waiting 2.5 weeks for the hip operation. And after that, she was in hospital for another 2 weeks and then was discharged. That's the time when that bed sore developed. And then she was treated for that sore in outpatients. And eventually, it made the blood got congealed in the skin, and they literally cut it out. And after that, it was exposed to the bone. That's how deep that bed sore was. I've got pictures of it that is frightening.
This is shocking.
Yes.
So you go into a South African hospital with a broken toe, and you come out 2 weeks later missing a leg because of what they've done to you. I mean, that is crazy.
That can happen. I literally wanted to go around every ward and ask people, what do you think of this hospital, and what did your treatment, what happened with your treatments? That's how I felt. this last week, because it's frightening what's happening.
Now, you make a comment here that there was a patient who was in a coma. She's in a coma, so she's out of it. She's out of it. But she's expected to clean herself with a mere bowl of water, even though she's not with it. Are you serious?
In both hospitals, they do that.
Yeah.
It was in the George Mukari Hospital and
Steve Biko.
And Steve Biko. A bowl of water, and she cannot. If I tell you the bedpan stories, it's absolutely horrendous. They cannot clean themselves. They do not even tell them that. Eventually I thought to myself, she can sort of heave herself into a wheelchair. And then they said there's a toilet that she can go to. You cannot even get a wheelchair into that toilet. At the end of the day, after about a week, I thought, let me just go down the passage. Surely a hospital must have a wheelchair-friendly toilet. 2 doors away, there is a wheelchair-friendly toilet. So my sister could at least go to the toilet on her own without a bedpan. But, and she could literally wash herself, take her little washcloth with her and wash herself in that little basin. But at night, to wash her body, they get a bowl and they put it down there. If you can wash, you wash. If you can't, they leave it. They take it away and they go. So, and that's the same with a bedpan. They bring a bedpan and she would look at them. She looks at my sister until she says, will you please, now they've got a vac on that bed sore, so she cannot get into a wheelchair anymore. And she would stand there and say, you cannot make a poo if you say you want a bedpan to pee. And I just cannot understand the mentality of that kind of thing. Or she would take the pan and put it next to her and wait and say, now make a pee. And my sister would say to her, I'm 83 years old. I can hardly lift myself off the bed to get the bedpan under myself. And, it breaks my heart. When I tell you the stories about the bedpans, I can tell you a million stories.
I think the one that sticks out the most, sorry to interrupt, is that, the one evening my gran had requested that for a bedpan, and they ignored her. They would come into the ward, go out of the ward, and she kept requesting a bedpan. Eventually, now just keep in mind, this is after her hip op.
Yeah.
And she's got that bed sore. So she basically, I wouldn't say disabled, but she can't kind of move on her own as much. So eventually she had to relieve herself using her robe and towel that we had to to her to the hospital because there's no bedding, there's no, pillows there are to an extent, but literally there's no bedding, there's no towels or anything. But she eventually relieved herself, and she basically had to sit in her waist until eventually they came to her and like, oh, sorry, we forgot about you. Like, really, you've literally just been in and out of the ward while she's asking you for a bedpan.
No, it's...
Okay, now the thing that I find also very disturbing is the comment that the medical instruments that they have in the hospital do not even work. And there's apparently no interest in checking if they do work. And that's something which really is management's fault. I mean, nursing staff should report it, but the management should be aware of what's happening in their hospitals.
Definitely, because they put a vac on her heel for about a week and a half. And, the more we told them this thing is not working, eventually they removed it. A week later, now this is now a week before, I would say a week and a half before she was now discharged. They put a new vac on her. And that thing literally, for the first time, they said, now we can do the skin graft. For about 3 weeks, they've been telling her she's going to get a skin graft. And they're waiting for the wound to heal to such an extent that she can get the skin graft. Now they've got this new vac on, and the doctor is quite happy. Quite a nice doctor. He said to her, your wound is looking great. We can see there's a blood flow for the first time. The wound is still very big, but there is blood coming through to the wound, so it's looking fine. After complaining about the service, and now they've discharged her. No reason, didn't give any reason why they're discharging her. So they said she must come back in a week's time to outpatients. So it doesn't make sense.
Now, you just mentioned doctors. Have you had a chance to speak to doctors who go to that hospital and say, you know...
Cannot speak to a doctor then. And if you ask advice at the desk, what is the next procedure that they're going to do, they would say to you, you have to ask the doctor. One day I insisted and I said, okay, then I would like to speak to the doctor. And she said, so now do you want me to phone him? You know you're going to have to wait. I said, darling, I'll wait. And I waited 3 hours to see a doctor. And he... You know, every time they see different doctors, so it's never sort of the same doctor. And he said to me, we are waiting for this to happen and that to happen. You never get a straight answer from anybody. How the doctors find their patients is nothing short of a miracle, because she was lying in an ear, nose and throat ward when she's an orthopedic patient. So I, honest to God, don't know how the doctors find their patients. Now, even that is strange.
Now, are the doctors largely black doctors, or are they white doctors? Or?
Mostly.
Most are black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of them are black doctors.
And do they have that same attitude as the nurses?
I met one doctor and he was actually quite nice, I must say. And there was one staff nurse in a previous ward where she was admitted to, that was in the ear, nose and throat. And what a marvelous woman. And I tried to go back to her with my complaint afterwards, because then they moved her to another ward, to the correct ward in orthopedic. The orthopedic staff are absolutely, it's to cry for, to see how they treat the people and the noise that they make. And, you know, I don't know if you know Derek Hougaard. That's the rugby player. He was admitted to Steve Biko about 2 weeks ago. And now they've got this, I don't know whether it was a male nurse. He kept on singing, ah ha ha, from a double story to a stone rock. You've come down all this way, come to a provincial hospital. But he was in ICU. And because he was a high-profile person, they treated him very well, apparently. But there was also people toying outside the hospital because he was there. But because of being a high-profile rugby player, he was treated very well, apparently. That's what his girlfriend says. But at one stage, they also tried to keep us from going. He was only 2 doors away from my sister. So they wanted to stop us from going in. They said, are you sure you're going to see a patient and not this? So there's just there's no organization. Nothing is organized in that hospital. No. And you bribe everybody. You want to go into the hospital and you want to go to the cafeteria, and it's 10 minutes before visiting hour, and you have to buy them something to get in.
Wow.
That's what we do.
Well, I just need to ask this question, because we've said that they treat all the patients badly, but do they give a particularly bad service or support to white patients? And what about intimidating white visitors? You've mentioned how you've been intimidated. Is this common right across any white visitor who came into that hospital?
I honestly would lie if I had to tell you. I know they did that to Pietru, and they definitely did that to me. They were so rude. And like I said, I was literally locked into the ward. It's got like a long passage, and then you've got the metal door that they lock, and they just wouldn't open it. So there is a lot of intimidation going on but whether it's just based on that night. And you know, the funny thing is, that night when I asked permission to see her for the 2 minutes, right after that, my sister said to me, there was a black girl lying in the corner and another black girl. Her husband came to visit her. He sat there around for an hour. The other one went to the counter. They were smooching there for about 20 minutes. So that was definitely a racial thing, totally. And I was very nice to them. I kept on saying to her, I asked permission if I can see her 2 minutes. That's all I want to do, is 2 minutes of her time. And that incident that happened, that sort of pushed me over the edge to do something about it, because you cannot complain. Nobody wants to complain, because the minute you do that, then they start intimidating or treating the patient even worse.
Wow.
So yeah, they forgot her on a pan for 3/4 of an hour. By the time this woman came back and ripped it out from underneath her, she said to me, Ina, I thought my skin was going to come off.
Wow.
She said, she just said, sorry, we forgot about you. And that was the end of it. And that's with a hip that's not healed yet. I honestly don't know what to say.
Now you've got a comment here which is related to Petra, who's in the side chat, and I just want you to talk to this. This is at Steve Biko Hospital, which is I think it's the biggest hospital in South Africa.
Yeah, it's a very big one.
Yeah, and the comments are: the rudeness of nurses to the elderly as a general. You beg for a bedpan, and when they bring it, they forget about it for three quarters of an hour.
It was my sister, that incident.
Right, okay. But Petra was at Steve Biko. Do you want to... I'll get both of you to comment about what Petra went through when she was there.
She was lying right opposite my sister.
Okay.
You know, and the patient, just before Pietro, there was a patient lying opposite my sister. She passed away. When her children came to visit her, they found her dead in bed.
Oh, no.
I swear to God, they closed the curtain. We came to visit, and my sister said to me, that woman is dead. So they left her there throughout visiting hours, and for about, I don't know how long after that, before they removed her. So the children actually found the patient dead in bed, her children.
This is just disgusting.
Just before Pietro came in, just a few days before Pietro came in.
Wow. Now, you know, the whole hospital system is a complete and utter disgrace, and they're now talking about bringing out the NHI, you know, the National Health Insurance. What's that going to do to the health system in South Africa?
I don't know what they're going to do with the poor people who's got medical aids, because my sister used to have a medical aid. And you know, my sister was a very well-educated milliner. She actually made all of Nelson Mandela's inauguration, all the wives, the people that went there, she did all the hats. So she was she was such an amazing woman. And unfortunately, COVID destroyed all their businesses. So to be subjected to this after having a medical aid, and we're quite a healthy family, so I don't know how this thing is going to work.
It's just another looting pot for them to take money that doesn't belong to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
now just,
I cannot see it working.
Just talking about the actual environment of the hospital. I mean, I showed some video footage at the start where there are monkeys literally all over the hospital, inside the hospital. You've just mentioned that you had them on the bedside table of your sister in a ward, stealing food.
Yes.
What do you don't they understand that that's unhealthy for people who are sick?
And they allow the patients to sit outside and they feed them. They eat an apple and they feed them and they think it's so. I went up to them and I said, it's not cute at all. This is a serious health hazard. While we were videotaping that, we were not supposed, you're not allowed to videotape anything, not even take a picture there. And we were actually waiting for the doctor. 3 hours we sat there, and that's when the monkeys came in, and there was no nurses around, nowhere to be seen. And they went into the cupboards, they jumped all over the cups, they were on top of the fridges, they walked into the ward, came out of it. I still said, you're not allowed to do that, they're going to lock you up. And she said, Ma, let me do it. It's the only thing that we can do is actually to video record it. And I'm very grateful that we did.
Yeah, and the straight cats.
And they went into the cupboards. There's no door in the cupboard because it's broken off. But they literally went into the cupboards, out, jumping over the cups that were washed on the basin. So they everywhere. Cats, you cannot believe the amount of cats with babies running around there. And the monkeys scratching in the dustbins.
Trash is everywhere.
Everywhere.
But
No.
at Steve Beaker, I've got this comment that there's toilet paper on the floor, old blood and human waste. People get left on their gurneys with no blanket, shivering from the cold.
That happened in the ward where my sister is lying. There was 2 men that came in, stark naked. They had their hands over their private parts. That was when she was still able to get into a wheelchair, and she was on her way to the toilet when she said to the one nurse that his blanket is on the floor, and she said, they don't feel anything in any case.
Wow.
And she just went back and she didn't know what to say. She said, I just didn't know what to do, because with a wheelchair I can't pick it up and put it over them. It was just not possible. And they were at the counter where you get admitted to the ward.
But these are inhumane conditions people have been kept in, and it sounds like the nursing staff act like wardens in a prison. And if you don't,
worse than that. I'm telling you, worse than that. They have no empathy, no compassion. I've heard men crying, saying, nurse, nurse, calling out, and they just ignore them totally, completely.
Wow. Jene, is there something you'd like to add?
I must say, and again, I would say thanks to Pietru for taking a lot of the footage that she did in the video, images of the bathrooms and stuff, because she pushed the staff to, because she managed to get a lot of the complaints up higher, to higher management. They actually, while we were there, the staff jumped to action. They started cleaning and scrubbing the floors.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if I had to say grime, I don't mean like you go into your restroom and you've tracked a bit of, let's say, mud or something on the tiles and you can just wipe it and it's clean. This is gunk. It's like literally caked onto the floors, onto the skirtings, the bathrooms. I think I sent you the photos from Pietru.
Yeah.
It looks like a I just want to choose my words carefully, but it looks like a public restroom that is accessible in a taxi rank, where there's a lot of commuters in and out there that, if let's say you need the loo urgently, and you're commuting in, let's say, 5 minutes, you don't really care what the mess is like, if I can put it as such. That's not too vulgar for the audience, but it's literally like that. I mean, the gunk was just caked everywhere. Old blood, used sanitary towels.
I'm actually showing those photos you sent me now. Everybody can see them. You can see the toilet rolls just lying on the ground, toilet paper all over the place. It looks like the seat isn't properly aligned with the pedestal. And if you have a look over here, you can see there's actually no toilet paper left on what's supposed to be a toilet paper dispenser, and it's broken. So there's nothing to wipe your bum with. I mean, this is in a public hospital. That is just absolutely disgusting.
Taps don't work, not all of them. The little basin in the ward was, you couldn't, I actually pushed it with my hand, tried to open, and it was clogged. It's heartbreaking to see. Beds don't work. You literally have to try and get it up and down, and the bedding is just absolutely shocking.
So most patients don't have bedding because they don't have it available in the hospital.
No, the one girl next door to us, her children changed her bedding regularly. We brought our own blankets, and she needed a second pillowcase. Well, there was hardly a pillowcase on the one pillow that they brought for her. And like I said, the very first night she went to Steve Biko, I said to them, can you just get another blanket? She is freezing cold because we've had really cold weather. And she said, no, we don't have blankets, and gave me a toweling robe to give her to put on. And they wouldn't allow us to come back because they say visiting hours are over. We can bring the blanket the next day. So
wow.
She said to me, Innie, leave it. I'll see what I can do. She actually took a jersey, and I took my jacket off, and we put that over her until the next day.
Wow. And Lynn says in the side chat here, a friend of mine, diabetic, was transferred to Barra from Clarksdorp somewhere. Leg was amputated. I was there the next day. She passed on that night. Gangrene
Lord.
set in. Her hands were going black. I mean, this is disgusting.
You know what? When she had her first operation on her hip,
Yeah.
you could see that it turned into septicemia.
Oh, no.
That's why she was in and out of hospital all the time. You could literally see it was a student or somebody, because there's a cut, and then you can see somebody must have thought, maybe I'm not doing it right, and another cut sort of further. You could see it wasn't one clean cut right through. And that wound went so septic that she was in and out of hospital for that. And then they treated her aggressively. After we complained like crazy, they treated her aggressively with antibiotics. And we eventually got it cleared up by giving her all sorts of boosters and stuff too. But the same with her heel. It also, they said, it's turning septic, and getting septicemia. So they've sent her home, so we don't actually know what the prognosis is for that heel at this stage.
Wow.
So we'll go back in a week's time and see.
And you know, when you're sick, a diet of vegetables and fruit and healthy stuff is critically important to your welfare. When you're getting served breakfast of 2 dry slices of bread as your breakfast instead of eggs and bacon and veggies and stuff like that, that's hardly a diet that's going to help people recover, is it?
Can't. That's why everybody in hospital, they bring the family, bring the food.
But what if you're an old guy who hasn't got family? You're stuffed.
It's enough. Unfortunately, that's why everybody is looking out. We had a black girl, the sweetest little thing, lying opposite my sister. We used to bring her food, and she didn't have anybody, and we just supplied her with food as well. When we brought anything for my sister, we took some stuff for her as well. And they used to sing for her, and they could walk around, so they helped her. But then, of course, they were discharged, and she was discharged, and they still keep contact though. But yeah, that's what you do. If you see somebody that's really needy and there's nobody coming to visit them, then you must supply them with stuff.
Well, my PA in Gauteng, Marlena, she had to go to hospital, And she only lasted a few days. It was just so bad. She said, I might as well go home. And while she was actually checking out, a doctor who had supposed to have seen her before came up to her and said, are you Melina? And she said, yes. He said, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I've come to see if you da-da-da. And Marlena said, look, it's okay. I'm checking out. I don't need to see you. So the next thing she gets is a bill from this doctor.
A bill from
They
do that. Yeah, they do that all the time.
A 1,500 rand bill for consultation. Yeah. Well, she said, I don't need to. And he was already in the hospital. I mean, this is a sort of shenanigans that are going on.
It's a money-making racket. I'm telling you, it's.
So it looks like, okay, if we just sort of summarize, the nursing staff are incompetent, disrespectful, and basically act like prison wardens. I mean, they're just shocking beyond belief. This is in the average South African hospital. A lot of the doctors, I'm not saying all the doctors, they're obviously good doctors, but let's say some of the doctors go in there and they basically gouge. They like in Marlena's case where she got billed even though the doctor didn't consult with her. So they're on the take. And as I said, I just want to make this clear that there's some good doctors, okay? But the trouble is, this is the trouble. You just need a few bad doctors, and it ruins it for the entire profession. It's like the South African Police Service. You've got some bad police which are screwing it up for the rest of the police service. I don't think there are very many good nurses from what I'm hearing. But, the odd good nurse, when she actually says, I'm a nurse in a hospital, people must look at her sideways because of, the way the average patient gets treated.
One of the cleaners, she's not sure whether he was a cleaner. She wanted a bedpan and she couldn't they just put the bedpan down and walked away. And she tried her very best to get onto this pan. And she said this young man, for the life of me, I can't remember whether she said he was cleaning the ward or what. And he said, Oma, can I help you get on the pan? And she said, I just threw everything out of the window and I said, please help me get on this pan. And he helped her. And you know how degrading that is for a person. But I need to tell you something else that happened in the Steve Biko Hospital. They took my sister in a small side room, and a doctor was supposed to put a catheter in for her. He struggled. She said, I don't know what he did to me. For half an hour, he couldn't get a catheter. What was he doing between my legs all that time?
Wow.
Saying he's putting a catheter. And then after half an hour, he still said, I can't get it in. Pushed her back to the ward around the corner. And then the next morning, a nurse came and it took her all but 3 minutes or 4 minutes to put a catheter in. She said, to this day, I don't know what he did.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And it's just to give people who are watching an idea of how bad it's become. Pre-1994, Steve Biko Hospital, they did a large number of heart transplants for black patients in Soweto. Yes. And now they don't have the facilities. They're just the whole thing has just gone to the dogs.
No, honestly, well, I have no words. I must tell you, I can just tell you, incident after incident that happened. I've given up 9 months of my life. I came down to help, and I'm still in Pretoria, trying to sort the medical things out.
Like I can say personally, I have not experienced anything of that such as a youngster, having been also pre-medical medical aid, going to government hospital. Sorry, but the one thing I must say is that from my experience, diagnosis of sicknesses and ailments and stuff is ridiculous. When I was 19, I started developing a hormone imbalance and problem that's probably, what am I, 31 now?
Yeah.
Carried on for a good 9 years. Mum took me back and forth, hospitals, ultrasounds, hormone tests, blood tests. And a lot of the stuff the doctors just kept saying, oh, you're getting fat because you keep eating. That's why I'm the size I am. But yeah, so to make it short, it wasted about 9 years of my life going back and forth to hospitals, being diagnosed with a kind of eating issue, having to see dietitians and
I just want to pick up on something here. You just mentioned dietitians. Petra says food was disgusting, no proper food. I even have photos of the food. Was ice cold and disgusting. Now we've talked about breakfast being 2 slices of bread. Was there lunch given or dinner?
No, Steve Biko, the food was in the George Mukari Hospital.
That's where you got the bread?
Yeah, the bread, yes.
Well, and what did you get for lunch?
Lunch was normally either pap with a piece of meat or a sauce over it with a teeny weeny piece of chicken or corn. They loved millie, what do they call it? Millie rice. It's like a porridge type of thing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. And what about dinner?
Dinner, very seldom that you got a proper balanced meal. It's normally that kind of food.
Wow. So I guess the hospital's got quite a good budget for food, but it probably gets cleaned up in the nursing quarters.
Without a doubt. Because definitely it doesn't reach the patients. That I can assure you.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, look, I'm going to wrap up this live stream in a moment. We've been talking for over an hour, but it's been absolutely shocking about what's going on in the hospitals in South Africa. And these are not second-hand accounts; these are first-hand accounts. And it's not just one hospital; it's right across the country. The entire health system has collapsed, just like everything else is collapsing. I'm going to ask you both to make a closing statement. Anything that's on your mind that you'd like to tell us about. I'll start off with you, Ina.
I can just pray to God that somewhere along the line they bring in some kind of system where they teach nurses to be nurses again and just get a passion for what they're doing. And, generally the people that visit the patients are so nice to the nurses because you think it might change it, but it doesn't change them. Yeah. They take whatever you give them, they take the cakes you give them, but they don't change their attitudes, unfortunately. So I pray that somewhere along the line something drastically might happen to change the whole system of the South African hospitals.
Yeah, and probably the only reason you can talk about this is because your sister has been discharged from the hospital, because if the hospital, she was there now, there would be, yeah, it wouldn't be good, would it?
I'd be petrified.
Yeah.
But she's got to go back again, so I will make sure that I'm with her every step of the way.
Yeah, I think you need to do that. And
well,
Jene, is there something you'd like to say just in wrapping up this live stream?
Oh, definitely. I think it also goes along the lines of what Mum said. If the staff stop viewing it as just a job and actually use it or actually join, to be a nurse for the passion of it, to genuinely care for humans and care for people, especially the elderly, people that are completely vulnerable in our society. I mean, children and the elderly are vulnerable. They look up to people to care for them especially when they're in the situation of need. If they stop using a job as just a way to make means of a good pay, and live their life in those luxurious ways that they want to, and actually maybe just put that aside as that's a benefit, but do what they were called to do when they were hired, and that's to care. To care for the people that are the most vulnerable in the society.
We just need a good system. That's all.
Well, you certainly need better inspectors. That's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the whole system is broken. Ladies, I just want to thank you so much for joining me tonight, and this live stream will be kept on YouTube because I don't think we touched anything too controversial there.
No.
We stayed away from that nasty thing from a couple of years ago. But I will be putting it up on lovinglivetv.com as well, and that's where most of our traffic happens. In fact, we had a live stream on Friday night about money laundering at the top of the ANC, and and that on Loving Life TV has had 300,000 views already, just to give you an idea.
Oh, goodness,
So,
well done.
We're getting the message out there.
Whatever you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for letting us, being able to say what we experienced firsthand.
No, that's fantastic. Look, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us your story.
No,
Good.
thank you very much for having us, and dankie Tannie Pietru. Thanks Pietru for also helping out.
Yeah, for
She's
sure.
helped a hell of a lot.
Yeah, and I do just want to say that Lynn has said in the side chat here, I just want to make this comment. She says, where is it? She says there was one hospital which is really quite good. Here we are. She says we can talk all night about these horrors, and then there are ladies that reckon they had the best service here in Germiston. Had a C-section there, not a problem. So there must be wards or some hospitals in South Africa which are better than the ones we've been talking about. But the point is that it's unacceptable that patients get treated that way.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you.
All right, guys, ladies, take care, and I'll chat to you in the near future, Jene. We got some other business to talk about. All right, take care. Bye for now.
You too.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Okay, now that was a first-hand account there of the situation in the public hospitals in South Africa. And apparently if you do fall sick, place to go is to Germiston, because apparently the hospital there is not too bad. But there are not many of those good hospitals around. That's the point we're making. I'm going to wrap up this live stream with Hier Bly Ek Boer, which I know Marius will love. And have a great evening, everybody. And don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have another live stream. Take care. And, before I go, don't forget to register on lovinglivetv.com to be kept informed. Bye for now.
Meer as 61,000 van ons voorvaders het op die grens vir ons gesterwe, sodat ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg. Hier is ek boer. Van stof is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. Soos diep in die nag sal die vyand kom, maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die asem in die somer wat vreugde bring. My oupa wat maniekie kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant. My seun soos my pa, los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my zweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoe wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek boer. Die leeu sal kom, 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 die leeu sal kom.